Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. On the streets of German cities, tensions are running high. With the general election fast approaching, protesters are determined to show their rejection of what they perceive as a shift to the right. With just 3 weeks remaining until Germans cast their ballots, opinion polls give the CDU-CSU bloc 30% of the vote, while the AfD trails closely behind. In the meantime, all of Europe is watching closely. Joining me now to discuss the current socio-political upheaval in Germany is Maria Skóra, associate researcher at the Institut for Europäische Politik in Berlin. Thank you for joining. Great to have you back in the studio.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning.
And I remember as we spoke here the last time, we knew that we're going to meet again here in the studio to discuss whatever is happening. So if you could give us a broader view, who is protesting, what is happening in Germany, and why is it happening as of now?
Well, I think what is happening in Germany now is the election campaign first and most. Germany is facing a snap election on February 23rd. So whatever topics are there on the agenda are inevitably instrumentalized or very highly debated during the campaign. And in fact, right now, the two driving topics of this campaign are, on the one hand, economy and a stagnation of German economy and migration. And last week, indeed, was a very intense week on the topic of migration. There were two law proposals brought to the Bundestag by CDU on restricting migration policy, the so-called Migrationswende, changing the pivot of German migration policy. And since they are controversial, that has caused a reaction in the society. Whereas the society in the majority thinks that Germany is not managing migration so well. This is a Deutschland Trend, a poll by the public broadcaster. The majority is not happy about taking so many asylum seekers, 65%. The majority is not happy with how Germany is managing migration. So politics is responding to those moods. However, one thing is the migration policy, and the other thing is the political process behind it. And the protests
and who will conduct the changes as well.
Exactly.
And what sort of changes we're looking into.
Yes, and so the protests broke out because the CDU is trying to move forward with the stricter migration policy, but to do it, they need the votes of the far-right AfD, and that was the cost of those protests.
So you said 65% are not happy about the current migration policy in Germany. So there's definitely a clear line, a clear division when it comes to both sides. What do you think is going to be the outcome as we're getting closer and closer to the election in Germany?
Well, it's also a good question why Friedrich Merz and CDU decided to bring this motion to the Bundestag right now. They could have well waited till, let's say, May.
There's always a reason for something.
Exactly,
happening.
But there is a good chance that Friedrich Merz will be the next chancellor of Germany. As you've mentioned, election polls show clearly that the CDU is in the lead, but the second most popular party is the AfD. And I think that the reason why he brought this topic is, on the one hand, to answer the demands of their own electorate and this broader mood in the German society where more center-right, right-wing voters are demanding a shift in the migration policy. But he also, I guess, wants to lead in this in this debate and do the agenda setting. So for now, last Wednesday, the 5 points for migration were voted in the German Bundestag with the support of AfD and FDP, so the Liberal Party. But then a bigger package of possible solutions was also voted on Friday, and it lost. And this was a package which was aimed at strengthening inner security and also harder measures on migration. But the point is that Merz is trying to show he's a strong leader, strict leader, a person who wants to take control of Germany. But the question is if he's doing his party a favor or is he doing the AfD a favor, because there is a shift in opinion polls within the last week, and it seems that not only he's disappointing some of the CDU voters who are not keen on CDU cooperating with the AfD, but also he's bringing the ideas and the narratives that the AfD was proposing into the mainstream. And in German, there's this word salonfähig, so able to move in the salons. And he's perhaps opening even more the door to the political mainstream of the extreme right.
So Mr. Merz is definitely treading a very thin ice, and it seems to be the case that he wants to have the cake and eat the cake. What do you think pushed him into the warm embrace of AfD and trying to think about having this sort of a coalition of sorts, this sort of a cooperation in order to get that migration bill? Yeah,
I think it's a good distinction you make between the coalition and cooperation, because as it has always been the case, Merz and the CDU and basically all mainstream parties in Germany are absolutely excluding any form of coalition building with the AfD, and well, it's the second strongest force right now, according to the polls in Germany. So it's in a way a big decision, and also limits the possibilities of future coalition building after the elections. So on the declaration level, the CDU is excluding the possibility of opening an official formal coalition with the AfD. However, we see that, well, he needed those far-right votes in the Bundestag, and he said that, well, this is a democracy. There are people who agree and agree to disagree, and also this is more or less direct quote, that a good solution does not cease to be good even if it's supported by wrong people. So this is how he justified reaching out or counting on the AfD votes to push the, this agenda for migration of the CDU. But that of course met with a backlash with strong criticism of practically all other political forces in Germany, the SPD, so Social Democrats, the Greens, the left, who called it, especially the Greens called it a certain Zäsur, so like a break of an era in German politics to officially cooperate with the far right.
Do you think that in any way, shape or form, Merz and the AfD are not going to agree on some major subjects, and they're actually not going to try and work together towards the migration bill? What's the situation? How is it actually going to affect the German political landscape, not only domestically but also in Europe? Because that sparks a lot of controversy.
Yeah, I think let's see how Merz will react, not only to this criticism that is coming from other political parties, but also this outrage that we've seen on the streets of Germany in recent days. I think it was like 80,000 people gathering only in Berlin to protest against it. People marched from Reichstag to the headquarters of the CDU. It's interesting to see what game Merz is actually playing. The AfD says that the CDU copied the points on migration to their manifesto, to their adapted the
manifestos are an interesting thing.
Yes. When
you compare and contrast them.
Yes, exactly. So let's see about it. As said, at the at least declarations level, no coalition with the AfD is possible, according to the CDU. But if we look at the numbers and ask ourselves what possible next government of Germany could look like, most probably it will be a great coalition again. So the coalition between the CDU and SPD, so Social Democrats, because this is what arithmetic tells us. Perhaps a black-green government, so maybe a coalition with the Greens, or a minority government. It is also a possible scenario with the Liberals. And this is also what the polls are saying, if I'm not mistaken. Bild and INSA were asking citizens, respondents, what coalition they would wish for. And there's no majority for any coalition, because the political landscape in Germany is so fragmented. But the most, about 1/3 of those who were asked that question would wish for the GroKo, so the Great Coalition, GroKo. So let's see how it works out. However, this last week was really also very intense, and I dare say that the heat of this debate and the words that have been spoken are also a novel in Germany. It's a usually very balanced, very civil debate, and it was a civil debate, but there were serious accusations of especially toward Merz, of being not credible, of crossing the lines. Let's not forget we're talking about Germany, where the topic of the far right is very historically
it's very
burdened.
And
exactly.
Burdened.
So, and this is also why it sparks so much outrage. But just like one more thought about the protests. So there are numerous people on the streets in many cities in the West, but also in the East. But let's not forget that although it is done and there is a majority which rejects the participation of the far right in policy making and decision making, the AfD has slightly gained in opinion polls. It's right now about 23%. So it's a good question for all political actors in Germany how to go about.
And not only in Germany, definitely a big question for all of us here in Europe and in the world, especially with the place Germany takes on the world of global politics and economy.
Yeah.
Maria Skóra, thank you so much for joining me, Associate Researcher at the Institut für Europäische Politik in Berlin.
Thank you for
Pleasure
having
to have
me.
you as always. Thank you.
Thanks.
And so this would be all for now here on World Talks, but please do stay tuned. We have a news broadcast by Diana Skaya coming to you in just a moment.